More breaking news out of the NFL on Saturday night, where the Atlanta Falcons are finalizing a deal to make Kevin Stefanski their next head coach. Stefanski was a two-time NFL Coach of the Year in Cleveland, but was fired after this season after going 8-26 the last 2 years. He's replacing Raheem Morris in Atlanta, who went 16-18 in 2 years as the Falcons coach. This is the first big move for new president of football, Matt Ryan. In studio with the fellas to react, and I turn to lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones first. What can you tell us the function of how this came together, Kevin Stefanski and the Atlanta Falcons?
So, been a lot of conversations between Kevin Stefanski and new president of football, Matt Ryan. A lot of respect within that Atlanta Falcons organization for the job that Kevin Stefanski has done over the past several years with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, this past season, when he had 4 quarterbacks but didn't really have one quarterback, certainly not holding against him the record there in Cleveland this past season. So this started to look like it could happen late this morning, and the Atlanta Falcons wanted to move quickly. Kevin Stefanski had some other interviews that were set up into the future. They didn't want him to get to those interviews. He arrived in Atlanta. They interviewed him, Matt Ryan, along with Greg Beatles, the team president, as well as Arthur Blank, Josh Blank, his son, who holds a VP title there, among other members of leadership with the Falcons. And they decided that they need Kevin Stefanski, who, as a head coach, he can be the offensive play caller. He can have an OC who calls plays. He did both while he was in Cleveland to varying degrees of success. And they believe that with the talent on offense, that they will be able to succeed in a very, very winnable NFC South. And lastly, at defensive coordinator, while they let some of their assistants under Raheem Morris interview other places, they said, no, you can't talk to Jeff Ulbrich, our defensive coordinator. It is very possible, if not likely, he will be retained as the defensive coordinator there in Atlanta.
A lot of pieces in place in Atlanta for Stefanski to work with some of those offensive weapons. But Mac, the murky water, still the quarterback position. JJ, you allude to even murkier waters there in Cleveland when it came to quarterback. How do you like this fit specifically for Michael Penix and his future? Or does it even speed up the clock where Stefanski might say, I got to see it, or I want one of my guys?
Well, I like this fit for Michael Penix because, to your point, you look at the success Kevin Stefanski had sparingly in Cleveland. He had a real good relationship with the quarterbacks. Now, the last 2 seasons, you can't really say the same thing. The last 2 seasons, he's won 8 games. So I feel like Atlanta, they're making this hire basically telling us they believe it was more about the dysfunction that was around Kevin Stefanski than Kevin Stefanski as a head coach. So if you're Michael Penix, you get an opportunity to reset your clock over again. You get a fresh start. And I believe Kevin Stefanski accepted this opportunity knowing and believing he can get the most out of Michael Penix. Because if you come into this job for Atlanta, Michael Penix is going to be your quarterback for 2026. So you have to believe, based on this film you study, whatever it is that you viewed of Michael Penix, that, you know what, I see something in him. Yeah. Because there was a short moment when Baker Mayfield kind of unleashed his productivity while working with Kevin Stefanski. So maybe there's the same path for Michael Penix, seeing what he did with Baker Mayfield sparingly there in Cleveland. He can do some of the same things for him in Atlanta.
Stefanski and Baker now back in one another's proximity there in the South. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in a division that has left us wanting more. How much do you think that factored into the decision for Stefanski, saying, I'm looking at the South, and if I could get this right at the quarterback position, we could take real hold of this thing?
I think that was a big part of it. You saw how the Falcons finished this year, and for a lot of people's estimations, it was a down year, an underperforming year for the Falcons. So for Kevin Stefanski, when you look at the makeup of the NFC South, you look at the makeup of the Atlanta Falcons roster, regardless of the timeline for Michael Penix and his return from the knee injury, you've got Kirk Cousins sitting behind him who Stefanski has some similarities with from their time in Minnesota. So there's some parallels there. For Kevin Stefanski, he's got to be over the moon ecstatic about the roster that he's inherited. Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I don't know what they're going to do with Kyle Pitts, but they've got some weapons on offense. They've got a lot of weapons on defense. Finished the year strong this year. So they seem to be a piece away in Atlanta and think it's the head coach. So it'll be interesting to see if this is the move that gets them over the top to where they want to go.
And a well-established offensive line. Caleb McGarry missed the entire season, but he will be healthy. You got Matthews, you got Lindstrom. You got some guys that can move people against their will on the offensive line.
Sometimes all you got to do is find that first domino and give it a push. The Harbaugh falls, then the Stefanski. This is sort of the order of operations we expected.
That's right.
what do we see next?
Isn't it funny how we were talking about how weak of a coaching candidate pool this was going to be, and then some guys got fired, and now all of a sudden the two dominoes that have fallen, well, they were just head coaches a couple of weeks ago, right? So that is in vogue, and that is what we are going to continue to see across the NFL. Be prepared to see far more second-timers, quote-unquote retreads, get head coaching jobs instead of these new hot up-and-comers. Now, we will still see some of those, but right now, leading candidates in certain places. You look with the Miami Dolphins, a zero-time NFL head coach, but previous college football head coach Jeff Hafley appears to be the leader there in Miami with John Eric Sullivan as general manager. They work together in Green Bay. You look at the Tennessee Titans. Stefanski was right there in the running to be one of the three finalists or so there. Matt Nagy may be the guy in Tennessee as we continue to look at that. Cleveland still trying to figure out what they're doing. Talk about Kevin Stefanski. Maybe that's a Mike McDaniel, who winds up there. And then lastly, talking about Atlanta, because they have Matt Ryan now as president of football. They have Kevin Stefanski as head coach. They have a general manager. And that GM, while not the primary football executive to the league office, is still going to be the GM in a lot of respects. They have to fill that position. A lot of people think it's going to be Ian Cunningham, the assistant general manager of the Chicago Bears. We'll see if that winds up taking place next week.
So that's the Iceman to Matty Ice, but business is done here in Atlanta for the first time as acting president of football. Matt Ryan identifies, and he gets his guy. It's Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta. A look here at the coaching carousel that has come to rest in two places. Stefanski to the Falcons. Harbaugh finally inking that deal earlier on Saturday, where he will be the new head coach of the...
On the second to last play in overtime, Bo fractured a bone in his right ankle. He's going to have surgery Tuesday of this week, which will put him out for the rest of the season. Steady's ready to go. And it was the second to last play before he threw the pass to Mims. Birmingham is where he'll have the surgery with Dr. Walter. And I don't really think there's any other questions. You know, in other words, this is what it is, and we felt like it'd be best to just tell everyone now. I'll take questions.
Sean, just after such an emotional victory, how deflating is it to get that?
Tell you what, the one thing about it, you know, he's such a strong, faith-based guy. He was sitting in the hallway with his family, and I went over and we're all talking to him. And, you know, he knows, you know, that God's got a plan for him. And he said he had one in high school. And then he said he had one at Auburn. And I said, I didn't realize that. I said, if I'd have known that, I wouldn't have drafted you. But he's a tough cookie. And I said, listen, I believe you're the second quarterback in year 2 to take your team to a championship game. And the first is Mahomes. And this team all year has lost key players. And we'll rise up for the next challenge, and we'll go from there.
Coach to your left, how do you want to see the guys on the team be there for him? And then what is your message to those guys as you obviously have more football to play?
Well, a handful of the team knows that and there'll be a lot of guys learning about it right now, which is tough. This is difficult.